The palace shook, a deep, bone-rattling shudder. Outside, the royal energy shields, once a soft, reassuring hum, were now screaming in protest. Plasma bolts, silver and blue, hammered against the outer walls, and the sky itself seemed to be on fire. Lyra, the loyal guard, grabbed Princess Eris by the arm, pulling her behind a towering crystal pillar. "We have to get out of here, Princess. The Vareth fleet. They're inside the atmosphere." But Eris's eyes weren't on the chaos outside. They were on the human. Ethan. He wasn't running. He was crouched low to the ground, his attention completely absorbed by a broken control panel. His hands were a blur of motion, pulling out glowing wires, twisting circuits with surgical precision, and slotting in strange blue cores that pulsed like tiny captive hearts. Lyra, her voice strained with panic, shouted over the din, "What in the stars are you doing?" Ethan didn't even look up. "Buying us time." Lyra's patience snapped. "You're just a mechanic." A faint, almost reckless grin touched his lips. "Exactly," he said, his voice calm amidst the storm. "And this entire palace runs on machines." The ground trembled again as another explosion rocked the hall, closer this time. Alien guards, clad in ceremonial armor that now reflected the fires of war, sprinted past them, shouting in their guttural tongue. Ignoring them, Ethan pulled a jagged shard of metal from his jacket and jammed it into the crystal board. For a terrifying second, the lights flickered, threatening to die completely. Then, they surged back to life, brighter than before. "Done," he muttered, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. Lyra stared, bewildered. "Done what?" Ethan just pointed upward. "You'll see." A deep, resonant rumble echoed through the air, a sound not of destruction but of awakening. Outside the palace, colossal silver defense towers, dormant for a century, began to rotate. They aimed their glowing tips at the invading ships. Then, with a sound like tearing reality, bolts of pure white fire lanced through the sky, slicing the first wave of enemy fighters into glittering dust. The alien nobles who had mocked the human mechanic just hours before now stared in stunned silence. One of them whispered, his voice trembling with awe. "The human... he activated the defense grid manually?" Another gasped. "But that system hasn't worked in 100 years. Lyra looked at Ethan, her disbelief warring with the impossible truth before her. You fixed it?" He shook his head. "Didn't fix it. Rewired it. Your people build things too perfect, too rigid. I just made it imperfect enough to work again." A soft smile graced Princess Eris's lips. "You saved us." Ethan finally turned to face her, his eyes hard and focused. "Not yet," he said grimly. "They'll be back. And next time they'll hit a lot harder." Minutes later, the three of them stood in the palace's command chamber. A massive holographic map dominated the room, its surface swarming with red dots that represented the Vareth fleet. They were converging on the capital. The Nivaran fleet was outnumbered 3-1. Lyra's voice trembled as she looked at the grim display. "Even with the palace defenses, we can't hold them off." Ethan stood with his arms crossed, unfazed. "Then we don't hold them off," he declared. "We take the fight to them." Lyra blinked aghast. "You're insane." A wry smile played on Ethan's face. "Probably, but I've built ships back home that fought their way through entire asteroid storms. You think I can't handle a few shiny aliens?" The corner of Eris's lips curved into a determined smile. "What do you need?" Ethan's gaze swept across the advanced alien technology filling the room. "An engineering bay, all your tools, and your fastest drone fleet." Lyra hesitated, but a single nod from Eris sealed the deal. "Give him everything he wants." Hours later, the royal hangar was a symphony of creation. Sparks flew like miniature supernovas. Ethan, standing on a floating platform, was the conductor. He was surrounded by Nivaran engineers who watched him not as a mechanic, but as a magician. He dismantled their pristine energy cores, rewired drone circuits with a speed that defied belief, and welded armor plating together with raw plasma torches. "What is he building?" one engineer whispered to another. Ethan, overhearing, didn't look up from his work. Something that shouldn't exist. When he was finished, 12 drones hovered silently around him. They weren't the sleek, perfect machines the Nivarans were used to. Their armor was uneven, their engines looked rough and exposed. But they radiated a raw, untamed power, a strange, potent mix of human tech and alien energy. He called them the Imperfects. These drones don't rely on your fragile AI systems, Ethan explained, his voice ringing with confidence. They run on direct human control, on instinct, on chaos. Lyra frowned, confused. Chaos? Ethan's grin was wide and fierce. It's what humans do best. He climbed into the modified control seat, a web of wires and interfaces, and strapped himself in. Patch me into the skies. Outside, the battle raged. The Vareth fleet had encircled the palace, their relentless fire chipping away at the newly activated shields. Then, from the royal hangar, 12 streaks of brilliant light launched into the sky. They moved in a formation that looked less like a military strategy and more like a chaotic, beautiful dance of death. On the palace ramparts, Nivaran soldiers gasped as the drones tore through the enemy lines. They dodged plasma fire with impossible grace, weaved through explosions, and struck with a precision that was both brutal and perfect. In the command room, Princess Aris listened to the battle through the echo waves, a unique ability of her people. She could feel his heartbeat within the signal. Steady, brave, unstoppable. He's winning, she whispered, a tear of relief tracing a path down her cheek. But Lyra wasn't smiling. She stared at the tactical display with a growing, cold realization. He shouldn't be able to control that many drones at once, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Even our best pilots can't handle more than 3. Aris tilted her head, a flicker of concern in her eyes. Then how is he doing it? Lyra swallowed hard, the terrible truth dawning on her. Because he's not just controlling them, he's becoming them. On the screen, Ethan's vital signs spiked erratically. His neural signal, the very essence of his mind, was fusing with the alien network. He was spreading his consciousness across every machine he'd built, burning himself alive to keep them all moving, to keep them all fighting. Ethan! Aris shouted into the communication link, her voice filled with anguish. Stop, you'll die. His voice came back, calm but impossibly distant, like an echo from across the stars. You said you can see people's hearts, right? Then tell me, how's mine look now? Tears streamed down her face. Bright, she whispered. It's too bright. Outside, a final cataclysmic explosion tore across the sky. The Vareth flagship disintegrated into a storm of white fire, taking the rest of its fleet with it. The battle was over. The city was safe. But when the smoke cleared and the silence returned, the human pilot's seat in the control room was empty. Lyra's voice shook. He's gone. His body couldn't handle the merge. Aris pressed a hand to her own heart, a faint, sad smile touching her lips through her tears. No, she said softly. I can still feel him. Her gaze drifted upward, toward the now peaceful sky. He's part of the light now. And high above the silver spires of Nivara, 12 imperfect drones continued to circle endlessly, guarding the palace like restless, glowing spirits. They were no longer just machines. They were the human ghosts. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one.